guys, it's Nicole and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to walk you through some chores that I have with my Hoyas. So I got these all 6-7 months ago, so they're all pretty new to my collection. I'm new to Hoyas. I grow them in semi-hydro, just like I do a lot of my orchids, and they're doing really well. I wanted to make this video to show you how I'm going to be taking care of them now that they're growing like crazy. As you can see, this was a little clipping a couple months ago, and now it's vining like crazy, growing up my walls. So I'm going to tidy things up. My Crimson Princess that you're seeing in focus right now is one that I took care of. But I'm going to walk you through how I'm going to tidy everything up. And if you stay tuned till the end, I will show you my entire Hoya collection. And I've been enjoying these. So stay tuned and let's get these tidy. All right, so the first one I'm going to be tidying up is my Hoya Krohniana Super Silver. I got this from a subscriber actually. We actually did a little swap where I sent some orchids and he sent me some Hoya cuttings. This was actually just a couple of leaves. It was like 5 or 6 leaves when I received it in January, and look at how it's grown. It's grown really nicely. It's vined really well. And now I just need to figure out what to do. So I thought of putting this in a little plant wire trellis. So I'm going to link the plant wire down below. I basically formed it so that it fits inside of the pot. I press the wire down and it holds pretty well in the Leca. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to hold it together with some little ties or some Velcro strips or something like that, and I'm gonna wrap the Krohniana Super Silver around the trellis so I don't have to worry about accidentally breaking the vines or anything like that. So I'm gonna walk you through it. So as I mentioned, I'm really new to these, so it's a flowering type vine. So similar to orchids, they do flower. But I hear that they do need some age in order to get blooms. So I can't wait to see how these do in my care. I'm finding that Hoyas, the ones I have at least, are really liking the hot conditions because they really had a growth spurt last month. And it was to the point where I really needed to start tidying these up. Well, I am wrapping the Krohniana Super Silver around the plant trellis, and I'm using, as I need to, I can use some of my Velcro or use some of my twist ties all around it so it could hold up. But my thinking is that as it grows, it'll continue to, I'll be able to wrap it around the trellis and it won't be hanging down my shelves. I won't accidentally break it. So this should be a nice setup for this plant. And when it finally blooms, when it has a little more age on it, I'll be able to showcase those blooms nicely around this trellis. I'm finding that the trellis holds just fine because this orchid isn't like super heavy, so I think it's fine. But if it's a heavier plant, then I would put another trellis around it and reinforce it with Velcro. So let me show you the final outcome of this Hoya Krohniana Super Silver plant. Not too bad for a first go around. This looks pretty good. It's growing really well in semi-hydro. I treat it just like I treat my orchids, where I feed MSU fertilizer. Sometimes I give it a little bit of kelp, but they're really taking off. This gets moderate light and it's vining really well. So far, so good. So let me show you some of the clippings that I got back in January, November. I got these from Yoshi. I will link his channel down below, but he sent me a couple of clippings. So these were my first ever Hoyas. So they've only been in my collection about 6-7 months. And as you can see, they're quite small. So I'm going to show you 2 of them that I'm going to repot. So you could see the difference between the before and after as they've grown in semi-hydro for the last couple of months, and the difference is quite remarkable. So let me show you the Hoya Bella, which is on the left hand side. Let me show you how much it's grown. So this is 6 months of growth, guys. This is quite large. This orchid has a bunch of peduncles, so it's trying to flower. but I had it in a 10-ounce cup in this sort of semi-hydro setup with drainage holes at the bottom. And I find that it drinks up the water reservoir very, very quickly. So I decided to put this in a much larger pot. I want to see it flower. It's growing really well. For 6 months, I think this is incredible growth. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it out of this little cup, put it in a much larger self-watering pot. I'll continue to use Leca, but you can see some of the peduncles there. They just keep coming up. I find that I keep calling them orchids, but it's a Hoya. I find that this Hoya is very vigorous. It tries to bloom quite often, so the larger water reservoir should help. So I'm putting this in a large tea-for-you self-watering pot with a wick, which I'm going to raise all the way to the top. And what that will do is make sure that there's lots of evenly distributed moisture that reaches the top of the leca. I'm not concerned about a dry top layer here, so I'm just gonna, I don't need to worry about it. The roots tend to go all the way down and not have any issues. So I'm just gonna use Leca, and I'm gonna bring that wick right up when I'm ready to go. And we're gonna get some nice room for these roots to grow. As you can see, the Leca is full of roots. It's grown really well in the last 6-7 months. So hopefully this larger setup will be good for the next year. Give nice room for it to grow, and hopefully we'll start seeing those peduncles not blast any longer. So I'm gonna fill the pot with more Leca. I'll of course be in the company of Zoe while I'm doing this, so it'll be extra annoying, but I'm gonna fill around with Leca, and here we go. Now we have some roots at the top. I'm not super concerned about that. A lot of the roots are at the bottom anyway, so I don't think we'll have any issues. But this kind of grew at an angle, so I'm going to put a trellis in. But yeah, I'm just taking a look at the peduncles here. They're coming in, they're blasting, and that was because I wasn't able to keep up with the watering in that smaller pot. So I'm really thinking that this larger pot will allow it to grow well, but also keep this plant nice and hydrated. We did lose a couple of leaves when I was putting this up, but I'll disturb this very little moving forward, just wrapping it around the trellis as it grows. But I think that initial time that you put it around the trellis, sometimes you might disturb it a little bit, but that's okay. I mean, it's gonna keep growing. I'm not concerned about it. This is a very vigorous one. I think it'll do better in this pot. So I'm going to take my plant wire and I'm going to cut it to make a little loop, just like I did with the Krohniana Super Silver. But given that this has more leaves, I'm going to make 2 little loops around the pot. I'm going to press it into the pot so that it can hold up, and then we'll wrap some of those vines around the trellis that I'm making. So I am going to cut this. I'm using just garden shears. This isn't like extremely strong plant wire, but it does hold up pretty well. If you double it up, it does hold even better. But I'm going to take 2 pieces. I'm going to use similar size pieces so they can overlap each other. And then I will hold them up with a little Velcro if they need some more support. So when you have 2, it's kind of better than having 1. And I will show you what that looks like shortly. But I'm just going to unravel them and shape it up so that the vines can go all around this wire. You don't have to make it too complicated. Just pressing the wire into the pot is usually sufficient. If you really want it to be stable, before you repot your plant, you can put the wire in and make a little hook around a drainage hole at the bottom so that it holds even better, but I don't have any issues just pressing it in. I find that the weight of the Leca holds it just fine, and it conforms to the pot since it's a very stiff material. So we have our first plant wire put down, and we're going to put a second plant wire. I'm going to reinforce it at the top to add a little bit more stability, and then we could shape it here if we want. We could do like a little heart or something like that. We could add more at the top, but I'm just going to keep it simple and make 2 little loops. I'm pressing it into the pot till it goes all the way to the bottom, and we're all set. And I'm going to reinforce it at the very top with some green Velcro here. The green kind of helps it all match together. That's why I like to use the green Velcro and the green twist ties. And by putting that on top, it kind of reinforces it and it holds a little better. Now I'm going to do what I did with the Krohniana Super Silver and wrap this right around those wires until we are all done. And this took me a little while, so let's fast forward. So this is what it looks like. I can't believe this was in a 10-ounce cup. So there was a lot of trial and error when I was doing this, so I didn't record the whole thing. I kept messing up. But the biggest thing here that I was a little disappointed about is that you could only really see the backs of the leaves. This is just because of the way that it grew. So you see the back of the leaf instead of the front of the leaves. But I think that's just fine. As it grows, it'll keep vining. I'll keep wrapping it around that. And as you can see, it's holding up pretty well. If it gets heavier, then I can reinforce it some more. But I think this will hold up well. And I think this will finally bloom for me very soon. But most importantly, it's way more tidy and it's not going to knock down any more plants. All right, guys. Now this one has been the most unruly of the cuttings. So Yoshi gave this to me as a very small cutting, and look how much it's vined and grew. It's just out of control. It grew out of my shelves and it's basically reached for my closet and outside of the lights. So I want to put this so that it's more tidy. And I want to make sure that all of it gets light and I don't want it to knock anything down. So we're going to repot this into a larger pot. No issues here with this not getting enough water because it's less thirsty than the Hoya Bella. But what I did was I took two wicks that I tied together. I'm going to do the same thing where I raise the wick all the way to the top so that there's nice even moisture on this Hoya plant. This is a medium-sized pot. But as I was repotting it, I realized, you know, we're going from a 10-ounce cup, we're moving to a medium pot, and I kind of felt like it wasn't enough. I wasn't giving it enough room. So I ended up switching to a bigger pot. What I'm doing is I'm cutting off the wire that I used to hang off my shelves since I couldn't free it because the vines were so long. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that and just empty out that same Leca. I'm just going to use that same Leca and I'm going to wrap it around with fresh Leca. It was a little stuck at first, so I just kind of used the, kind of pinched the cup a little bit, like squeezed it a bit to kind of loosen it up, and then it finally came out. Really good root growth there, and not bad for 6 months. But with the medium pot, I wasn't convinced it wasn't enough room, so I just moved to a large pot. So finally moved it up, and now we have a couple of inches on the side. So we have a little bit of Leca on the bottom. We have our same wick that's moved all the way up to the top. We're gonna have some roots that are exposed, but I'm not super concerned. But what's a little bit annoying is that this Hoya grew to the side, so it's gonna be a bit of a challenge. I did the same thing I did with the Hoya Bella, except I put a taller wire, and now I have to figure out how to get the vines around the trellis without breaking it. And that's going to be a little bit of a challenge with those two vines there that grew all the way to the side. So I'm just going to go very slowly, and this is the final outcome. I didn't record it just because there was so much trial and error. I thought I was going to break it. It took me longer than I expected, but this is the final outcome. I couldn't get super close to the trellis on that vine that grew to the side, but I think this will work out just fine. Everything is wrapped nicely, and now as it grows, I'll be able to continue wrapping it around. It's got really pretty leaves. A lot of the leaves are quite small that grew outside of the lights when they vined because they grew towards my closet. But I think now that everything will be under lights, I will get those really cute leaves. And hopefully in the next couple of months, we'll get some blooms on this, which I'll show you once they finally come out and bloom. So that is all. And I was able to tidy everything up in the grow space so that nothing is like tripping over each other. So with that said, let me show you the rest of my collection. First up, we have the Hoya Carnosa Crimson Princess. I really like this one. It's got very pretty variegated leaves, and the new leaves grow in pink, so it's super cute. So I tidied it up in a heart-shaped trellis. Next, we have the Hoya Bilobata. I got this as a cutting and it grew really well, so I also had to tidy this up. And I added another trellis at the top and I kind of put all the vines up. I'm very curious to see what this looks like when it blooms, but it's cute. This one is the Hoya Carnosa. It already had a trellis, so I just vined everything up and put everything inside so it was tidy. This is a really common one, and I actually have two of them. I'll show you another one later, but I think the leaves are different. This one is the Hoya Krohniana Super Silver. Before I tidied it up, I wanted to show you what the vines look like before I staked it up. And again, I got this back in January 7th actually, and it's only been 6 months and it grew a ton. So highly recommend this one if you can find it. This is the Hoya Bella. This is the most vigorous one. In my opinion, it's trying to flower already from a small cutting, and this is the end result of what we did together. I'll keep you posted on what this looks like later. This is the Hoya Cumingiana. I think that's how you say it, but it's known for its really small, cute leaves. I hope they grow closer together as this gets some more age on it, but it's also very vigorous. I'm very curious to see how it does. This next one is my Hoya Pubicalyx Splash. I got this as a larger cutting, but the root growth is insane and it rooted extremely quickly, just straight up into Leca, and it's doing really well. I can't wait to see flowers. This here is my Hoya Compacta, also known as Hindu rope. I got this as a small cutting. I find this one grows slower, so I moved it from water all the way into Leca, and I think this will be fine for a while here. This next one is the Hoya Retusa. I really like how it grows kind of all over the place. It's very unique, and I think it'll also do well in this cup for a little while. It hasn't grown a ton yet, but it'll hit its stride. This next one is the Hoya Crimson Queen. I actually had two, so I took it and I put them together into this trellis here. So can't wait to see blooms, but this is very pretty. It's got variegation on the outside compared to the princess, which is on the inside. Next, we have the Hoya Carnosa. This one I got from my friend Grismelda. I will link her Instagram below. She sells these at a really good price. Anyway, I kept this separate from the other Carnosa just because the leaf shape is different, and I kind of vined this up, and I love the look. This also bloomed for me back in April, and I found the blooms just gorgeous. It had a nice fragrance too. It was very sweet, kind of like candy. And I thought it was adorable, so I can't wait to see more. This one is the Hoya Burtoniae. I also got this from Grismelda. It's growing a little bit slowly in this cup for now, but once it hits its stride, I'm sure it's going to get going just like the others. And it looks a lot like the Bilobata. This last one is the Hoya Shepherdii. This one looks like green beans, and I repotted it from a little cup to a larger self-watering pot. And I'm very curious to see how this does. This one's pretty unusual. It looks like a bunch of string beans, and I'm curious to see the flowers. Well, anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. Let me know down in the comments if you like Hoyas and you like this kind of video. And I will catch you guys next time. Bye, everyone.